U.S. debt explodes by $1 trillion in just under a month. Pepe the Frog looks like he's no longer allowed to be on Instagram threads, and U.S. inflation is finally starting to retreat. This is the Blockchain Bunker.
Bum, 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 bum. You ready for this? I'm ready. Welcome.
If you're gonna screw me, at least pull my hair.
Hell yeah. What you got?
They could start chopping off fingers. They're like, give me your seed phrase, but I don't know it.
Out to give the numbers out. And I was like, no, hang up the phone right now.
Or like when it dropped in 2020, was it like exciting?
400,000 to 600,000. The generational signals are now.
Level. So I don't even know if we're gonna get back below there, but if we do, that's kind of where we
TV show.
Welcome one, welcome all. We are joined by a fantastic crew here today. We got Kelly Kellum joining us. What's up? We got Tony, the man, the myth, the legend. We got Adam joining us for a long time since he's been on the show. So glad to have him. And the Biscuit Jesus, the one and only, behind the sticks, pulling the levers, doing the things. And he's also
But not putting my name on screen.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's coming.
No, never
You showed
will
up
show
late.
Never will show up.
Names
But-
are for winners, okay?
That's true. That's true. We got major winners here in the chat. Crypto Stevo, what's up, dude? Michael Vollmer, Trippy, Tyler Durden. He was in studio here pretty recently, I believe.
Yes.
TJ's Chicken Salad, Anecdotal Smith, Mark the Shark, Ryan Anderson, Indy Halo, Bob from Accounting, and Chili Rainbow, the Deadwood. Hello, all, and of course, Uncle Tim Foyle. Thank you for joining us today. It's a Monday. We're just getting after it here. Had a good weekend. Spent a lot of time fixing up the house, getting after it, and my garden is just pumping. So I was having fun in the garden this weekend, putting out a couple tweets. People were mocking me, because I still use Twitter to put out a tweet about, homesteading and stuff. I know I am not technically apt enough to make my own phone device that's connected to the internet. Absolutely not. I'm still plugged in to the internet to a very large degree, just doing the things on the back end that I can to put my money where my mouth is when I say that we should do better as a humanity, and we have all of these things that we want to improve with the climate and with our consumption in this country. I put those actions to the ground. I put my hands to the dirt and I actually try to get involved with it. So
Drew, you had the best response ever when I think it was TJ was asking everybody what their bull market car was going to be. And everybody's like, sports car, this, that. And they got to you. You're like, I'm going to fortify my FJ Cruiser and
Yeah.
make it ammo plated with, I was like, yo, serious.
I'm serious about that too. I mean, it's my dream car. It was actually the FJ Cruiser was my brother's dream car. He passed away. So I've got his tattoo he wanted. He's actually, his ashes were in the ink that I got of his tattoo that he wanted. And I also got the FJ because that was his dream car. Kind of, continue the legacy that he left behind. I love the FJ Cruiser. You can still get a new FJ Cruiser, I believe, in the United Arab Emirates. So you can have one shipped here. Kind of a pain in the butt to get a hold of, though. And now, obviously the FJ is at like 300,000 miles. it still runs really well.
Yours is at 300K?
Yeah, it's at
Holy
300K.
moly.
It doesn't look like it, right? I know. I've done some dirty work to that thing. In Colorado, I see someone from Colorado right there, Mike Vollmer. But Colorado had some pretty vicious snowstorms and things like that, and that FJ Cruiser was the only reason why I made it home a couple times in Colorado. And I've been following all the weather stuff, so that's pretty important for me to have a reliable vehicle. That's why I'm pretty big on the FJ Cruiser. At my dad's house, we have a church pew with the Toyota symbol on it because, we're all just Toyota Maxis here. A lot of Coloradans in the chat. What's up, you guys? Excellent to see. Excellent to see. Well, without further ado, I see a lot of capitulation from the Federal Reserve coming. There's a few reasons why I see that on the horizon. Our first kind of big story that I saw that really stuck out to me this morning was the U.S. debt exploded by $865 billion in 1 month, larger than Finland, Hong Kong, and Greece's combined GDP. So the latest numbers from fiscal data show that the June 2nd of this year, the total public debt outstanding of the country stood at $31.4 trillion. Data from the World Bank shows that Hong Kong's GDP hovered at $359 billion as of 2022. In the same year, Finland registered GDP of $280 billion, while Greece's economy produced $219 billion. So the CBO predicted that by 2053, the U.S. GDP will rise to $79.5 trillion, with debt meteorically ascending to $143 trillion. That is a pretty hefty
it's not that
number.
bad. It's only a 2x.
I mean, it is only a 2x. You're fair enough. Okay. But, moving, getting a 2x. Yeah. Getting a 2x on $80 trillion. That's quite a move.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of this expenditure that we're going to see is not only from, infrastructural upgrades, things, as we advance as a society, we come up with different technologies. We're going to want to implement those onto existing infrastructure, which is dwindling. And so there's going to be a lot of spending coming from the federal government to do so. But on top of that, conflict is kind of pushing the buck forward, pun intended, on the need to create more money, basically, and we've been experiencing some pretty high inflation numbers. We've seen some tightening by the Federal Reserve as of late, very, very, very upward. It was actually the highest velocity of rate increases we've ever seen as a country over the last few years to kind of stave the inflation levels down. And, on that note, we saw some interesting kind of projections come out from the Cleveland Fed and the University of Michigan. The US CPI for June is due on Wednesday this week. This week is going to have a lot of big meetings happening with the Federal Reserve on where inflation's at, where the monetary theory is going. Headline inflation is expected to fall to 3.2% year over year, which would make for the lowest print since March of 2021, kind of the beginning of this meteoric rise in the cost of goods, which has really been, kind of hurting the pocketbooks of day-to-day people. And this matters for me in the crypto sense because that money that I'm having to spend above and beyond what I'm used to spending on my groceries is no longer able to be put into cryptocurrency. You know what I mean? So it kind of sucks when you have to pay twice as much for your grocery bill and that DCA money isn't really there for the time being. It kind of forced my hand into having to build out my own kitchen because the cost to build out my own kitchen was insane when I needed to do it. I moved here kind of at the height of the gas inflation prices and everything like that. And I had a lot of work to do on the house. I was reaching out to different contractors to see what they could do the project for. And I mean, I was able to get it done for basically a fourth of the price as these contractors were. It took a lot of work and it made me sweat quite a bit, but that's just something else that I stress on people is whatever you can do yourself, do yourself, because then you can use that money to invest or you can, put that money to work for you rather than, just seeing it kind of vanish into thin air, which, it really sucks when we see a perfect buying opportunity right now. I feel like now until about the halving is really my kind of golden spot to buy cryptocurrency and find really, really good gains out of it. And then from there, I'll be looking at more kind of speculative small plays on altcoins and things of that nature. But seeing this inflation be projected to actually come down really is kind of a breath of fresh air. And, I know there was a lot of people calling for, the hard-sided reality of hyperinflation happening. America has many, many levers that we pull to avoid such a scenario. And we are still technically the world reserve currency. I know there's a lot of vying for that power in the background, but that's still the situation as of right now. And Caleb Franzen, a good friend of the channel, good friend of Kelly's, Kelly kind of got us connected with Caleb. He's got great takes on kind of the macroeconomic situation. And he came out with this: producer prices in China are contracting at a steep pace, even faster than expectations, based on historical relationship between Chinese producer price index and the U.S. CPI consumer price index. And these things matter. They produce, we consume. That's the way it is as of right now. I continue to reiterate my outlook for even faster disinflation over the months ahead. Headline: CPI will easily reach 2%. So now he's saying that they can reach this 2% CPI number, which, if the 3.2% year over year number proves to be correct over this week, that would be a lot more tangible. Chinese PPI year over year actual is negative 5.4%. So it's costing them less. And the forecast of negative 5 was previously negative 4.6%. So I think that's pretty interesting when we think about, because we're still relying on China to produce a lot for the United States and really the rest of the world in general. If they can lower their producer price index and that inflation goes down on that metric, that is translated to the rest of the world when they're purchasing those goods. Then we did. What's that? That
coupled also with the cost of oil, which has gone down. So we're seeing the shipping of those goods being a cheaper logistical expense, as well as a producer price in terms of in the factories, how much it costs. Now, we want that to be immediate, but nothing in this world is immediate.
Right.
This is the type of data that we want to look at when we're looking at markets. If you get lost in what the price is today and that's all you're looking at, you're not doing yourself the service of understanding the data that you could be looking at that gives you foresight into where price could be going. And when we're looking at, in terms of inflation data is going to drive what markets are doing, and markets, how they're performing, is what's going to drive what the risk narrative is. So even if you're only invested in digital assets, Bitcoin and altcoins, if you're not paying attention to these traditional market sort of signals, then you're not seeing, you're not basically looking into the data that's going to have a future impact on where price could be going, so you can get in position in the best, most fortuitous times.
100%, man. And, on top of that, your shelter or the cost of living for what you're renting out or what your mortgage is, that plays heavily into your just month to month ability to invest in general, for most of, like for me included. I'm a middle class American, I guess you would say. At times, I've worked 3 low class jobs at a time to equal that middle class level. And seeing, we had another tweet Caleb highlighted, but it's more pertaining to the apartment rent growth continues to cool fast through this pace is moderate, obviously, but we saw this massive spike in the cost of rents, which really, really hit people hard. Because while that's happening, the interest rates to pull out a mortgage and just decide to buy your home was also increasing pretty exponentially. But this is a pretty good metric to look at, is year over year change in U.S. apartment asking rents. And these have began to crater down. Basically, we had that peak in March of 2022, and this has been a really, really steep decline. If you notice that, they're having to pull back because you can't just let the apartments, in my opinion, this is just my kind of gut opinion, is that they had a lot of apartments just sitting empty. Airbnb craze kind of died down. Not so many people were interested in opening up their own Airbnbs, and the prices for those weren't really reasonable. So this is going to be a pretty good metric as we look at our overall economy in its, slow recovery from the gigantic overprinting that we did in flu season and shutting down the world economy. That really hit people in a very tangible, real way. And it's insane that we're just kind of not talking about that. But
well, we also had a lot of national migration, within probably most countries. But I mean, considering U.S. alone, living in New York City, when the pandemic happened, occupancy in New York dropped to about 30%.
Yeah.
And so I told my wife, I said, we had planned to move about 6 months later. I said, we're moving now because, being the fact that I look at charts all day, I also saw the same data was happening within rents. I was like, we need to move now while there's low occupancy because I can navigate a very, very beneficial deal for rent.
Yes.
And I got like a $4,000 a month apartment that we got for $1,700 because there was no occupancy. And then 6 months later, when we would have moved, that was when people started basically, there was migration from urban areas to suburbs and then other middle America, Florida, all these other places out of these major metropolises, people getting away from being confined on top of other people in these tight communities. And then what happened is then you get all these, you get some people that stay in those regions, but then you get this ultimate flight, just like everything. There's an equilibrium. Like when you see price pump and then it comes back down and then finds the equilibrium. Same thing happened with this population of cities. So people left and then people came back. It's not like more people came back, but they came back at the same time, which the same apartment that I got for $1,700 6 months later would have been about a $6,000 or $7,000 a month apartment. And then, you wait another 6 or 8 months or now about a year and a half, the prices have kind of fluctuated back to an equilibrium.
Yep.
And we're seeing that across the board, not only with real estate and, this sort of equilibrium that is never going to truly find itself from where we were pre-March 2020. This is why it's so hard to look at charts and economical data right now, because there's no past time in history that we've had a globalized economy as well as a global economic shutdown. And so how do we really look forward as to where inflation should be, where it's going to find an equilibrium, the cost of goods coming back to place? And now we're also seeing this sort of matriculate over into things like the used car industry, prices on other goods. And so it's going to be very interesting, considering the Bitcoin 4-year cycle, global liquidity, and where we should be, but also finding the equilibrium on stuff. Are we going to go into a recession? Are we not? All we can do is look at all this data, throw our hands up in the air and take a shot.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Sorry.
What was that?
It was funny. Look at all the data and take a shot in 2020. Never mind.
No, my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What am I missing?
TJ, we can't go too off the rails here.
That was it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
But what you said, I just want to touch on something you said. So you saw the people come back to New York, and what I saw, just from the HR standpoint, I saw that kind of heavy flight straight to work from home type situations for companies. And then they spent a year or two in that situation, realized we're really not doing that great with all these people working from home specifically. So I do see, I still have people connected to the hiring industry, and I do see that kind of workforce basically be pushed back into the office because they need that in-person interaction. So I don't think the work from home explosion in the forever, economy of kind of being plugged in through the metaverse type conversation is actually very tangible because people realize the value of in-person work.
But Drew, let me ask you a question, because one of the things that's a huge pressure on at least the national economy here, and it's been a lingering sort of issue of trying to figure out where the markets are going to go, is the fact that corporate real estate, business, basically corporate real estate, renting out spaces for businesses, and those businesses, obviously, those spaces were rented for those the staff people coming into office. Now, one of the weird sort of things that we haven't had to deal with before is because we had the pandemic and everybody, it was a flight to safety or a flight to another city or a flight to remote, whatever all the different impacts were. It led a lot of corporate real estate, those buildings empty, and so there is a potential that everybody is sort of hoping doesn't happen, and that's having a capitulation on that sort of part of the economy, because it's a multi-trillion-dollar sector of the economy that once it starts cascading, it moves very quickly. But do you think that some of this pressure to get people back in office is specifically of businesses wanting people back in office, or do you think there's some sort of top-down sort of economical pressure from
100%.
Government, because they need to pressure businesses to get people back in office so we don't have the capitulation?
100%. Well, and I think it's the latter of the two. I think that a lot of the U.S. economy actually relies on that commercial real estate being utilized and those payments being paid. And I look at it just in relevance to that conversation. I look at this incoming ESG push as almost like a contrived New Deal that the U.S. is going to be putting into place to basically push our economy forward to create. And yet our jobs are going to change. Things are going to change, but there's still going to be a massive push to kind of reignite the American economy and really the world economy for that matter. And I think a lot of it's going to be coming through redoing this infrastructure. We talk about wind and solar situations as not being the most logical step for it, but we know that this ESG push or this reinvention of our infrastructure is coming either way. And there was something that came out today that was just kind of interesting from Bloomberg, that it would cost $196 trillion in investments to zero out the world's carbon emissions, which is, the goal zero from Mr. Gates by 2050. So they pushed their agenda 20 to 2050 by now. But Nick made a great point. It was never about the environment. It's about pushing the economy forward.
You know what? I agree with this wholeheartedly because on the argument, and I'm not like, I believe in some aspects of global warming and all this stuff, but large in part when we talk about what the talking points are for some of the argument for people very heavy in the ESG world is they talk about EV electric vehicles and how it's going to be this massive impact, beneficial for ESG conditions, whereas they don't talk about cars making combustion engine cars making up 7% of the greenhouse gas, whereas something bizarre that you would never think, the brakes that are on cars actually put more emissions into the air, basically negative impact to the environment than I think it's roughly about 20%. And there's not
That's
an
why
EV
you switch to ceramics.
and there's no EV car out there that doesn't use the same brakes, same type of brake pads as combustible engines. So the argument to move towards electricity doesn't have anywhere near the impact that people think it does because the other components of the car actually still have the same net negative impact on the environment. So what's the real push here? Is it because they have the connection to those industries and they're trying to transfer power through wealth through those industries or what? I feel like you have some thoughts, sir.
I have a slight disagreement.
Talk to me, baby.
Electric cars use electric braking more than their actual brake pads, so there is less from
regenerative braking. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Through the actual motor slowing.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's expected that like with Teslas, you're not going to change your brake pads for like years compared to a standard car because of that.
I think a lot of it isn't really about making cars 100%, carbon neutral or like completely reducing that. It's about making small steps to that. And if we can get to a position where the average market, purchaser is going to be considering something that is more safe for the environment, then that's a great step to take, regardless of if it's 100% fixing the problem or not, because you can't really 100% fix the problem right now. It's just going to take incremental steps over the years so we can get to a remotely safe spot. So.
Well, it's funny how much they literally poo-poo, pun intended, on alternative things like Toyota. What they ended up doing was making, I don't think gasification is the correct term, but essentially they've been buying all the cow feces and then basically breaking it down into hydrogen and then not only being able to use those plants to power houses, but also refuel cars. But like right now, the modern day electric car industry is a joke.
Yeah.
If it doesn't look like they're trying to trap people, it's like, there's people who have electric cars. They're like, I get 150 miles per charge. And then a few months later, they're like, I get 120. And the degradation, the use of lithium and everything else is horrible. But like, I'd be interested in Tony's opinion on this. The high capacity capacitors, which is kind of a funny term, but basically these solid state capacitors that are far better at holding charge, as well as I think there's literally a sodium chloride battery that a lot of people are looking at. So it's like, cool, those are really easy components to get. They're not horrible to dig like lithium and everything else. So it's like, I do want to push this narrative, but the current push innovation in this area, but like currently where things are is a joke.
Yeah. When it's going to take time to get off of the oil system where we've made, that's like, there was this executive order made by the Biden administration that pertained to Bitcoin mining. And, at the time, there was just tons of hit pieces coming out about how much energy Bitcoin uses to mine and all of this FUD about proof of work coins. But in the fine print within the executive order, it actually laid out a plan for methane gas capturing to be done on site at the actual oil rig. And methane flares basically make up about 1% of overall CO2 emissions. And that's just out of the United States. Now, 1%, it doesn't really sound like a lot, but if you have a way to capture that methane gas flare, utilize the energy to mine Bitcoin, not only are you getting the Bitcoin out of the deal, but then you're pulling that 1% of emissions out of, what we're putting out into the atmosphere. That actually sounded like something that's, honestly, I still believe that we're going to see a marriage between ExxonMobil, Shell, all these different major gas conglomerates and Bitcoin mining companies, and
well, here's the question. So say it's 1% of the emissions, but and I know potential energy is 100% not the right terminology here. But let's say, there's, again, we'll make artificial units here. There's 10 units that come out that would be able to power a miner or something else for days or weeks. So it's like they're looking at it at the emissions perspective, but not necessarily looking at the wasted potential energy that could be used.
Yes, that is 100% accurate. And there's actually, in that writing of the executive order, there's a huge financial incentive being built up in the background by the United States government to provide incentive for these Bitcoin miners to go on site to those actual mining or to the oil rig locations and capture that methane as it's going out. And I used to work on the oil rigs, and I mean, the methane flares are huge. Like, you see those things through the midnight sky and it lights up the whole place.
And what's so great about it is this is what some of the naysayers around Bitcoin that don't truly understand it don't understand, which is that for the first time in history, we have something that we can very realistically and tangibly utilize to capture energy and turn it into value, and that value is stored forever. So that means now we can, in a meaningful way, monetize and incentivize. It's monetized with incentive, doing things in a green way, because if you are using renewable energies, even if you don't believe in global warming at all, maybe you're just a complete capitalist. Fine. By nature of wanting to drive your profit margin higher, you're going to utilize things that are renewable because it takes less energy over time, it takes less effort, takes less capital over time to utilize that. So whether it be down in El Salvador using the Bitcoin, the volcano for a mine, or hydroelectric power, or wind farms, or all this all this energy that is produced globally, around 30% that's wasted every year because there's no true way to store it, to utilize it. Now we can offset the issues like in Texas with the power grid by utilizing Bitcoin mining to harvest that energy that is excess, turn it into value. And then when the power grids, basically you're strengthening the power grid. And then when there is a heavier load on the power grid, you sort of start to regulate and turn off certain mines.
Right.
And now you re-add that power to the grid for homes and houses, therefore utilizing more of the energy more efficiently. And it's incentivizing growth and better use of all of our systems out there because you can monetize it. So in reality, Bitcoin and mining is going to be the biggest incentive in the history of the world for green energy, if those people would just open up their eyeballs and look at some of the data rather than reading some FUD narrative from Gary Gensler.
It looks like they're opening their eyes. I mean, since we saw Larry Fink come out with this, Bitcoin being digitized gold last week, we have this really funny tweet from Lex Moskowski. I don't follow this guy. I actually just came across this
before
tweet.
you go way down this, who really doesn't want CO2 levels going down?
Who's that?
Just guess. Photosynthetic organisms.
Oh, trees.
I'm just kidding. But before we pop on
baby.
this, I don't see why, if we're doing all this genetic engineering and everything, don't give this idea to Bill Gates, by the way.
Please don't.
Coughing.
Don't give him.
But there's plenty of chemoautotrophs out there that we'd be able to utilize and harvest to be able to break a lot of this stuff down. If we really
It's
cared
about the
this
money.
area, I know it's about the money, but that's what I'm saying. That's the proof that it's about the money, because there's so many options that we're just straight up not doing
100%.
at all. And you claim you care about all this, and you're destroying all the rhizobium and all the nitrogen fixing bacteria. And you're like, yeah, but it's about the CO2. It's like, Yeah, but you're destroying the soil. So like, how much do you actually care about this narrative that you're pushing? Anyway,
a lot of people don't believe in climate change, but I'll tell you who does believe in common change.
If it needs to be like human induced weather change or something. Well, that's a different thing.
I was about to say.
But it's just
about to say.
Same thing when you say GMO. We're all GMO. We're all genetically modified organisms. Is it recombinant DNA? Is it human induced done? Like, is it transgenics? It's like, you can't blanket statement this stuff because then people pop onto a narrative, they hear keywords, and then they blank out any reasoning after that.
Yeah. Well, you know who does believe in climate change? That would be HARP. HARP absolutely believes in changing the climate. But we had this come out. It's kind of a post-mortem BlackRock hit piece viewpoint. We have
Actually, hold on. I want to call potential BS. The Deadwood said nitrogen is the most abundant element on our planet. Not sure that's true. I actually want to look that up.
It's all this BS on Twitter. That's the most abundant.
Saying, like all your aliphatic chains and everything else and everything being based off of carbon and the tetravalence of carbon. Now, if you're saying in the atmosphere, yes, diatomic nitrogen is massively more prevalent than everything else. But yeah, I actually do want to look that up. I'm not saying you're incorrect. I actually do want to look that up.
It has to be carbon.
I'm leaning towards carbon.
It might be the fact that you got to capture it. You know, I mean, there's infrastructure that's needed to capture these things too. You know, but I mean, after we saw Larry Fink last week, he's like, yes, Bitcoin is digitized gold. Obviously, I brought up, I mean, the executive order from the president was done, I think, about a year ago from now. Still on my mind. I still paid attention to that, and it still hasn't shaken loose. And now
we've just about the crypto stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bitcoin has suddenly became greener, according to mainstream media. It helps third world countries. It's not being used by baddies anymore, apparently, because Larry Fink said so. But we just have this highlight of all of these major media corporations coming out. Everything you need to know about Bitcoin and the environment. How Bitcoin helps civilians escape the war in Sudan. Bitcoin network to reduce more emissions than its energy sources produce. And here's just I'll pull this down a little bit. That's a, oil rig with the flare. And terrorists, North Korea, and other illicit actors begin to move beyond Bitcoin. So we see this big, scary Bitcoin narrative seeming to dry up a little bit, which is, it's pretty refreshing to me. And I knew that they can't beat us, so eventually they're going to join us here in the crypto community and the things that we focus on in this disruptive new technology. You can't destroy Bitcoin. It's decentralized, it's being created, and with that you have this gigantic ecosystem of cryptocurrencies being built around it, and on top of it with some projects building directly on Bitcoin like Stacks and ICP and things of that nature. So they're basically just capitulating into us, which I think is super bullish because it's what happens. It's always felt like this is what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force. And that'd be the government and the financial controls there within, and the wish for freedom and the fight for sovereignty that I don't think is easily taken out of the human spirit. So, seeing this kind of move into our direction, the talk about super cycle has been something we brought up quite a bit, but seeing these massive institutions kind of tap out or say uncle to crypto and Bitcoin tells me that we might be on the brink of one insane bull market in the near term.
So you think, based on Larry Fink's press junket last week, when he gave the basically ultimate stamp of approval globally for everybody that's been looking the other direction or was against Bitcoin, in addition to the spot ETFs, and us seeing real world fundamental change in the narrative with major institutions that previously fudded, do you think that this is a recipe for as the thumbnail says, massive bull run?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. There's other things that are compounding that as well. Like, the supply of the dollar versus the dollar denominated debt amount is another thing that I've been paying attention to. We had this tweet from Mark Harvey. He considers this the most bullish chart for Bitcoin. The world is massively short on dollars. In his article, Bitcoin is not a hedge. Interesting article, but then you click it to find out more. Today, there is approximately $92 trillion in dollar-denominated debt in the U.S. credit system, but there are only 9 trillion actual dollars. Despite the money supply having increased by nearly 10 times since the financial crisis, there remains over $10 of a dollar denominated debt for every single dollar that's in existence today. Only dollars can pay for dollar-denominated debt, and in this context, dollar debt only includes the most vanilla of anything that could be considered debt: bona fide, fixed maturity, fixed liability debt as estimated and reported by the Fed. Mortgages, credit cards, student loans, auto loans, bank debt, corporate bonds, federal and state and local government debts. It does not include estimates on the unfunded pension liabilities or derivatives. Now, this section is in the quadrillions of debt, merely a fixed amount of dollars owed at a defined future point in time. The Fed may have massively increased the supply of dollars, but the world is still short on dollars, and dollars are owed and must be demanded in the future at some point to repay these debt obligations. And this is just an interesting chart to highlight and pay attention to. This is from the St. Louis Fed. This is the supply of dollars versus dollar-denominated debt in trillions. Make it thicker?
Make it thick.
Oh, thick.
Bring up that girth,
I was just
baby.
gonna say click on it, but you know.
No, never. I'll break the computer if I do that.
Damn
It just makes it larger.
So here's 2019. Then someone accidentally touched a bat and hung out with Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci a little bit too
Wait,
much.
is that chart a shower or a grower?
The shower or grower?
Yeah, the chart.
I
The
think it's
funny
a
thing
grower.
is, it's a shower and a grower because we've seen what our debt's done in the last,
No, 100%.
20
I mean,
years.
$1 trillion in a month. I think that's very noteworthy for how fast we're increasing our debt. And this, like it says, has to be paid one way or another in some form of currency in the future. And I think that
our interest rate, even if we took out zero more debt, our interest rate per month is nearly $100 billion.
Yeah.
So we have $1 trillion a year obligation just to be at equilibrium.
100%.
Well, we're not taking on any more
130%.
debt. Remember, they put it on pause till 2025, so it's God mode.
Bullish.
Yeah, we have cheats enabled. We have cheats enabled now.
Isn't that interesting how they can just be like, yeah, we're just not going to pay attention to this massive
And Bitcoin's a
overexpenditure.
Ponzi, by the way.
Right.
Who's going to come asking for it though?
Well,
That's why we.
let's move on to that.
Ooh.
subject.
Yes.
Let's move on. Hold on, but this is just
Does somebody smell foreshadowing?
yeah, that was really good. Hold on, where is this? I have where is this thing? Because I think that there's a little bit of competition going on between Brics and the United States as far as who is the head honcho of the world reserve currency. And we saw something very interesting here. So the Brics Alliance has just announced the gold-backed currency that also includes a basket of Bitcoin released to destroy the dollar. I don't think that's definitely hyperbole. It's not going to destroy the dollar. It wants to compete with the dollar. They've also released this list of countries that have applied to join BRICS. BRICS being Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, you have just a laundry list of countries you would expect to be applying for this, but the interesting one is Mexico. I did not expect Mexico to be kind of slapping us in the mouth like that. But, you know, they're applying to be part of this new BRICS currency system. And another notable one here, let's see here. So we had UAE. That's a really important one for the...
So what is it going to become? Like Brixum and then Brixum?
Brixum Plus? I don't know what they're going to identify as. It's going to be a hodgepodge. Another thing you look at is Turkey. Turkey's part of NATO currently, but they're applying to be part of BRICS.
Yeah, not a good look.
Well, let me ask you guys. Let me ask you guys a question though. Do you think it's a real move? Do you think it's I don't want to say legitimate, but do you feel like it's a real move to actually move towards something that, you know, like the narrative says around BRICS, you know, getting completely out of the dollar? Because if that were to happen, that would cause, you know, global pressure on the economy for decades on that transition over, because of how much money and capital is, you know, tied in with dollar contracts, with trade, with, you know, and if the U.S. had a catastrophe in its economy, it would, you know, obviously matriculate over and really have a lot of downward pressure on global markets everywhere. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's actually a move to move out of US dollar, or it's a concerted effort to put pressure on the US to, I don't want to say relinquish control, not that, but to soften some of their stances and basically put pressure on them, because, you know, they can't pressure us militarily. So they're doing it on a global sort of concerted effort to put pressure on the way we are navigating with the pressure, with the control we have of the US dollar.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're kind of talking about two wings of the same bird here. I think that, you know, the fact that the idea of BRICS was contrived out of the United States right before September of 2001, just kind of made me question if we're looking at a controlled opposition type situation between Russia, China, and the U.S., kind of a hodgepodge of this conflict to get everyone well confused and then end up all in the same basket of a one world currency by the end of it, a kind of siphoned, controllable basket of people, information, and money flow, because that's what governments vie for, is to control and to have a kind of a handle on people as a whole in general. So I think that, what we're looking at right now, I'm not discounting the fact that this isn't going to be a hot conflict, or that, this isn't going to get ugly. I do think that, but I think that the end goal is already written in the books. And I think that they're pushing us basically all towards a one world government and one world currency.
But to Solar Miner in Spain, to your point, I think I agree with you, but I think that you're kind of missing the broader point. You said I would think the euro will want to keep the dollar. Well, they still have the euro. They still will have the euro, but the point here is the idea of the world reserve currency is the dominant currency that is used during global trade transactions, because you want to have something that you're having a settlement layer that has as close to basically the smallest amount of volatility, as well as not being controlled by some sort of, dictatorship or something like the CCP, which is funny. And I hate to say this about the U.S., and I don't want to get us banned here, but let's be the U.S. is really just a hodgepodge, basically charades of, of trying to claim that we're, a democracy, but in reality, what we are is the word democracy while still having some sort of oligarchical, or I don't even know how to describe it. It's just a charade what the U.S. is right now, and I really wish that we get back to it. Even so much as
the amount of the U.S. politicians that straight up are like, "Oh, we think Xi Jinping is a great leader and what he's doing."
Well, I mean, one of the things that points us out, though, is I saw yesterday a short story or video or whatever on one of the socials that was talking about, and it's kind of been sort of just swept to the side under the rug. There's a court case where the Department of Justice is basically supporting freedom of speech, and the U.S. government is appealing it because they want to censor certain things.
Yeah,
it's like, why would they even think it's okay to even be involved in that case whatsoever? Because that is the epitome of one of the most important tenets of the U.S. Constitution, which is freedom of speech. Why would the U.S. government ever want to censor, basically go to court and appeal? It's like they're not even trying to hide it behind closed doors anymore.
Right, 100%. And that brings to mind, when they put out the Patriot Act, right? Our Fourth Amendment says that the government is not allowed to collect data about citizens without a warrant. Yet, in recent decades, the government has been spending taxpayer money collecting troves of information by purchasing it, rather. Has this activity ever been challenged or taken to the Supreme Court?
It wouldn't matter even if it was
it.
taken to the Supreme Court.
They're not collecting it?
They're getting it. They're getting their third-party companies to do it.
Oh,
I'm saying the NSA too, but I'm just saying it's.
I was just about to say everybody seems to be ignoring the fact that they're just working through some.
100%.
I mean,
and each one of us, I'm sure many of us here and some of you watching have seen that South Park episode with the human centipede, where essentially it's a great metaphor on all of us. We don't realize how much we're participating in it. People talk about, the infringements on rights and privacy, and they're complaining about it on a social media application. It's like, by complaining about it on a social media application, yes, you still have a right to have privacy, but by using that social media application that you already accepted all the terms and service, what are you talking about? I mean, all of us are partly to blame for all of this. And
you can look at it as a good way to let them know you're pissed, though. Yeah. You know what I mean? Let them see how pissed you are. It's okay. What you got, Tony?
Two things, and one of them's random. One, their biggest goal is to create division, which has been working very well. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, unrelated, RS Crypto, look up thermoelectric generators.
Yeah.
Okay. Thermoelectric generators.
That's how you create electricity from heat.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it similar to like a modified piezoelectric?
I think so. There's everything's static, and I think there's resistance involved because heat correlates with resistance. I don't
So
want
did
to
I get
botch
it
it.
right?
I didn't even read your thing.
I don't even know what a pizza
No,
resistor.
so yeah, I said
Boil water
using a
and
turbine, which is literally what nuclear and everything else does. But then, yeah, modifying resistance coil and piezoelectric ceramics.
Yeah.
Yay! Tony's a smart one, not me.
He is. You
Hey,
were
I'm-
in like engineering.
BJ's
for-
a smart guy. Don't let him fool you.
You're like a robot
the
engineer
dumb
or
one.
something, aren't you?
I was a robotics engineer
See?
before diving into the world of Frankie candles.
Bam. See? There you go.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
I was
Frank is
smart
solid
before
human.
I dove
I'm
into
playing.
Frankie.
We love having Tony. I mean, this
if,
is really
if there's
interesting.
one person in the world I would give up an engineering career for, it's Frank. Trust me.
Oh,
It's a real love.
down here.
We got an
Bangs.
interesting eclectic group here, man. We have
Frankenbangs.
all kinds of different viewpoints and all kinds of kind of specialties that we focus on, and we all come together to try to figure out what the hell's going on, because there is a lot of data flowing. You know, you can get your opinion verified if you just type it into Google. Either way, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on.
Oh, yeah.
You'll get fed that information to say yes, you're correct. You know,
Anyone can
you
bias
get
a search
fed
in their
that?
favor.
you can get fed that.
Like FED,
Oh God, they better not be.
the Fed.
Now, I'm sure they're tired of me calling my friends, telling them about the latest brisket I smoked. But you know, that's besides the point.
What kind of paper did you use
For what?
to smoke the brisket?
raw for sure.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Well, we talk about U.S. debt and all the problems that it's got. The world as a whole, there's a lot of reasons why, you know, financial systems need to be redone across the world, not just within the USA. And I found this tweet about the highest debt to GDP ratios in the world, which I found kind of fascinating. This just highlights the highest debt to GDP ratios in the world. And now, just for context, the U.S. debt.
No, what it highlights is what we were talking about earlier, that it's all about manipulating numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So here are all the biggest losers.
Yes,
Where's
100%.
United Arab Emirates.
With
Where's
the
Saudi
surplus.
Arabia?
Is it
Where are
ju-
all the people who are making money that are just not on this list? So the U.S. dollar looks so
Is it just
strong.
me, or should all those have the number and then the percent sign? Isn't that weird to see percent number?
No, that's how it goes. Percent first.
What?
Just like
What?
dollar sign.
To whom?
Same thing.
No.
No, that's like unpleasing to the eye right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't care.
I
if it
didn't
looks
even
wrong,
notice
it is
till you
right.
pointed it out either.
But, you know, look, Lebanon is paying 360% of their debt to GDP ratio.
It's actually percent 360, but
Oh,
Yeah.
God, don't do this to me. Don't send me down that. I don't want to think that way.
Well,
Japan?
in the past, at least in 2014, when we loaned all the money to who wasn't Zelensky yet, they were
Oh,
charging
Biden? Oh.
300% on all of that.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, we're helping them. It's like, oh no, it's called indentured servitude. We give them a lot of money and then charge percents like this.
A
100%.
tale as old as time, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Classic.
And over the next 100 years, you know, there's very predatory loans that have been given out by China to a lot of developing nations that they're going to be beholden to China for a century for these infrastructure plays that China's made. And they show up like, hey, we're going to just redo all your roads. Everything's going to be great. We're going to give you a brand new city, but you better not miss that payment.
It's
for
just shocking what they've been doing in Africa.
Oh,
And
I know.
and people really aren't talking about it as much
Yeah.
as they should be. Like, they're everywhere.
No, Africa will be China in 100 years if it continues. These loans have, you know, very, very nefarious details in them where basically China can expand its sovereign territory if they don't make payments on it. So,
And they're also like employing Africans to do, you know, certain different parts of labor and whether it's construction or mining or whatever.
Yeah.
They're terrible employers, first of all. Are we surprised? No. So that is just another element of like, now they can't even stop working for them because they're not going to have any money and they owe them this money. So it's like,
it's a precarious situation.
it's horrible.
Look up the Belt and Road Initiative if you want to learn more about kind of the 100-year outlook for what China is trying to do with its movement of materials and goods, where they're going to produce it at, you know, and what kind of locations they're setting up their next infrastructure and sovereign control of. You'll see that they're trying to basically get a strong grasp of all of the commerce happening everywhere but the United States. We just already purchase everything from China as it is because we all go to Walmart and buy useless Frisbees and things like that.
Frisbees are not useless. They're fun.
Well, okay.
They're very
fair
fun.
enough. Fair enough. But we could produce them here in the
How many
United States.
frisbees do you?
I own like 4.
You own 4 Frisbees?
Listen, I may be a big
Any
guy,
disc
but I
golfers in
did
the
I
chat?
did go hard in Ultimate Frisbee for a few years.
Hell yeah.
I can toss a disc. I'm just just.
Have you guys ever gone into the water at a frisbee golf
I
location?
don't, okay, no, not
Into the
frisbee
water?
golf. I mean
Yeah,
like normal frisbee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like
golf
frisbee
is
golf.
sick.
I like
Frisbee
frisbee golf.
real
back in the
man.
day.
Frisbee golf's lit.
Real man's frisbee.
Did anyone try Threads? Did you guys try to get on Threads?
I'm on
Yes,
Yeah?
I'm not on there, but Frankie Candles is on there.
there. I
on
got
Threads.
on there. I've only made one post, but
You and everybody
It just
else.
feels like Twitter
No.
12 years ago. Just all you can do is basically post.
I got
Yeah.
discouraged because I know Tony D is not going to be available, and I don't feel like adding underscores and numbers. So I'm just like,
Well, I don't know if you mind sharing your Instagram. That's what it's based on.
it's Tony D, but it's the word toe, like my big toe,
Oh,
and then
oh,
like
gross.
the knee, and then D with dots in between.
Yeah, probably would be the same thing. It would require you to be.
I don't even want that. No, I'm glad I didn't do it.
Well, you can just head over to OnlyFans. It's still locked down.
It's
the
also
toe.
annoying right now. They don't have. How do you roll that out without a hashtag
Wait, did you
system
say
in
Tony
place?
fans?
Who needs
Tony-
it?
Tony
fans.
fans.
Oh my god, that needs to be a thing.
Tony fans.
Tony fans, man, come on now. There's a-
Tony fans.
oh wow,
Kelly will be the first guest.
that feet pic came out of nowhere.
So
So
get that big toe.
I don't know if Threads is going to make it, but it is owned and working with Instagram, which is already well instituted into the social media sphere. But there's a couple takes saying that it's not going to go anywhere. Prediction.
Of course it's not.
Yeah, I mean this is what
All
they
right,
think.
Twitter shills.
Yeah, here
Cool
we
it.
go.
I don't think it'll be a Twitter killer.
All of you are
It was
Twitter
2 months
shills.
ago.
All of it.
Literally,
Blue
the only
sky,
reason
like-
why
Come on.
I'm allowed on Twitter, Adam.
I
That's why
know.
I like it. I like
Twitter
being
shill.
allowed to speak.
Twitter
I like
shill.
Twitter. I mean,
Twitter shill.
Is anyone following the Elon Musk and Zuck beef? I love that.
Dude, who do you think's going to win? Are they going to actually?
I
Elon
love
Musk,
how Zuck
man.
called him a cuck.
I'm like
Musk called him a cuck.
I'm a Musk fanboy, bro. I think Musk is.
They
gonna
need to make out.
win.
They need to make out.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do that after they
settle
fight.
this.
Making out.
Settle this like real men.
Settle this like men and kiss.
The Godfather says to the NSA create
Obvious.
Bitcoin. They did make SHA 256.
You
That's all
think it
I'm gonna
was?
say.
Oh man. Oh
yeah,
man.
Crypto Allah, I agree.
Hopefully Drew-
Threads does seem weak. It seems like a rushed rollout, if you ask me.
It
mean-
doesn't have a really good layout. Like, I mean, this guy's got a litany of reasons why it might, not work well. He's saying that many brands, journalists, media outlets do not like Elon's politics. There's been some recent stumbles at Twitter, rate limiting and Twitter's debt limits, its options, basically. He believes that if he can, he will receive the following: more lock-in from brands who will become dependent on the Meta app ecosystem, which that's a reasonable take. A lot of advertisers left Twitter when Musk did move into it. New revenue channel
Even
brands.
though their revenue on ads is at an all-time high.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, well,
Okay.
and they just disagreed with his politics or his. People like
No, I'm
me.
saying they're making more money now.
Yeah, 100%. And what I like about Twitter is that I'm allowed to be there. Like Facebook deleted multiple accounts that I made. I had to make a new phone number and a new email just to try to get back onto Facebook. They delete that too. It was just like a fly being flicked off the wall, and it was very aggravating as a person that's just trying to reach people, trying to find a middle ground between.
I think
you
once
banned on
the
that? Are you banned on
censorship
Threads?
starts scaling up in Threads,
Dude,
which
I was
they'll
about to say.
they're probably slow playing it because if they have anywhere near the same algorithms as Facebook, they're going to have droves of people.
That's what
Well, I
being
think-
pushed away.
How
think
long
the
is it
thing
going to
is-
take? Sorry, you go.
I was gonna say, I think the thing is, people are forgetting this thing like rolled out and then immediately exploded. So you're like, yeah, it's not meant to handle this. Like, of course, they got 10 million
That's a
in 2
reasonable
days or
take.
something.
30
so like
30 million
It doesn't,
in one
They
have,
just
all,
hit
it
the
doesn't have all the
100 mark,
features of a 15-year-old social media platform
Yeah.
with 10
Just
million
wait till
users.
you start
Yeah.
seeing the independent fact checker things come up on Threads. It's going to be very frustrating. And that guy's mentioning like Twitter's rate limits. That wasn't even like, what are the limits for like valid accounts are like in the thousands. Like you're not going to
No,
wasn't,
but check this out. So years ago, but back in the MySpace days, I'm as well as other entertainers and other people that were using social media back in the early 2000s. I'm one of the reasons why people have like those CAPTCHA codes and stuff. I very quickly I hired a coder, developed a system to where I had 50 different MySpace accounts, and I used it for like basically focus marketing in different markets when I was touring as a singer. And so in order to run that, I had to have basically a bot go out there and do friend ads, send messages, and all this. And so I found out, and this is back in 2005, 2007, somewhere in there, that time range. So what Elon Musk is doing right now is no different than what should have happened for a long time and has been happening on other social media platforms. On MySpace, for instance, you could only do 500 actions a day. You could scroll through people's stuff fine, but any friend ad, any message, any post, you're limited to 500. So if you did 500 friend ads, you could send no messages. Okay. And so what Elon Musk is doing, it's not like all of a sudden some new thing. Oh my God, he's limiting stuff. No, he's doing something that probably should have been instituted a while ago. And if you're getting through 10,000 views a day, you're not even reading the stuff. You're literally just scrolling like this, just scrolling.
Is it 10,000? Because when it was first rolled out, it was 600.
It was 6, and they upped it to 10,000.
600's mental.
No.
Why? No. Well, here's the question: Why you even like limit it at all?
Because they're trying to limit the sort of pervasive bot.
That's the best way?
Data scraping. There's a number of different ways, but
it can't be the best way to limit everybody. Do some verification upgrades, man.
Flip through it all day long. And this brings up my mind, like, I did see that Twitter had filed for money transfer licenses.
That's
it was a while ago, though, right?
I saw some recent movement on it where it's actually still being pushed through. And, it just brings to my mind, like, is Twitter going to take the next punch and try to institute some sort of crypto payments on its network to kind of get that leg up? I mean, it feels like a lot of crypto conversations are kind of isolated to Twitter, but Instagram, to be fair, I got to give them a fair shake because they haven't choked my recent account. I created a new Instagram account about 6 or 8 months ago, and it's actually exploding. And it's really refreshing to see. It was nice to see that flu season ends and we can get back to real life, and they can stop strangling people like me on the digital public square. It's a really aggravating situation when you just have a pretty reasonable take, but it doesn't agree with the mainstream
sometimes
narrative.
You just have to put a clot in the argument.
They should have two different.
That's true.
They should have 2 different lanes on Twitter. You can, because some people want to be anonymous. Fine, you can be anonymous, but you're going to have limited exposure and limited access. All right, you're not going to, but if you're verified, because for instance, if you're on Tinder or any of these other things, which is just a silly, you can verify yourself by just basically your profile, one of your profile photos, you take a picture of your face and it compares it with your profile photo to make sure you are who the hell you say you are. So if we started doing something like that potentially, and you have the option, you didn't have to do it, but you're going to get more exposure if you do because you're a verified account, then it's not like it was in days old where you had to pay $10, $15, $20, $30,000 to get verified pre-Elon Musk. And now all you have to do is pay $8 and you're verified, but there's still no physical verification of some sort of mathematical algorithm of your face or something. I don't know. There's a number of different things that they could institute, but I think the viewership limiting, I mean, I'm behind it. I'm with it. I think it sucks for people that aren't the Twitter blue, but then again, you're also not participating and trying to get it verified anyway because you're not spending $7.
That's probably why I haven't ran into the limit yet.
It's cheap. Just do it if you care that much.
Is it like $8 a month or something?
No.
I think you should. It is
social outcast.
I like a lot where Twitter is right now.
I think you should get limited ads shown though if you do pay for the verified. I think you should only get ads if you're not paying for the verified. That way, part of it's verification, part of it, like for instance, I pay for YouTube, whatever it's called, so
premium.
Premium, so I don't have to watch ads. But that's part of it. You pay the money, you don't have to watch ads. I feel like if Twitter did that, a lot more people would verify
They
themselves.
should be paying us to have to watch ads.
Yeah.
I liked the model that Brave had. I made almost $1,000 just having ads allowed to come to my
Dave Digital.
What was that? It was like Brave browser, and I used it for headhunting. Dave Digital, out of the technological gulag. We released him from the dictatorship last week. Good to see you in the chat, brother.
Speaking of gulag, so we have deepfakes getting really good. We have Midjourney going AWOL.
Yeah.
We have AI being fantastic. Whose bet was with me that the next fight with Elon and Zuck is completely fake?
That's hologram?
That's how they test how well people take on this footage.
That's Project Bluebeam.
Yeah. Oh!
It's very scary where that stuff is heading to.
Yeah,
so
did
much
you see the Drake concert, right? Drake sat down and got handed a book by a hologram.
No, that was not as what it seems.
It wasn't?
No,
Give me more.
That was a actor with a face morph thing going on.
Really?
Yeah, there's
Okay,
an actual person sitting.
What if it was the shapeshifter that woman saw on that flight that went viral?
Yeah, that was different. That was different.
Dude, I love
That's a ghost, by the way.
The tweets would That was a really interesting situation. We did cover that last week. I still don't know what to make of the lizard person plane encounters. Shout out
bro
to
was
chat plus
chilling.
one if
Let him
lizard
chill.
people are real. I don't know. I'm still, maybe draconians walk amongst us. I don't know.
What about this is a weird little tangent, but have you guys seen some of those things going around about a bunch of, and I want to believe we landed on the moon, but some of the footage of like the NASA stuff that's happened lately where they're showing it and then they show like the other, 2 or 3 other screens and they show people like basically that there's an absolute green screen. So how much of what's happening with NASA is true? How much isn't? Have you seen those things?
I have.
Man, what's your initial impression?
It's so easy to create CGI now. We could be creating CGI now that would mimic the kind of imagery we got all those years ago to make us question that.
Why would we lie about it?
That's my question.
What is
Why haven't we been
gaining
back?
from that?
I feel like
man?
there's no incentive to lie about
There's
it.
not.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Well,
hey,
there was a
That's how they
race.
get you.
There was a race to get to the moon first. If you guys remember.
Yeah, there was more of incentive to lie about that. Like modern day stuff. Who cares, man?
Yeah. When
Oh,
I'm
moon
like,
rock.
Woo!
is this all staged? What's going on?
Well, I think the moon is real. I think birds are real.
Birds.
There's also like I saw something last week about like flat earthers, and it was basically saying like everyone says that all these NASA generated images of like the sphere and the view from space are like fake, but at least we have those. We still have yet to see a picture of the edge of the earth as these people claim.
Hey, there's
don't worry
people
about that. Don't worry about
Just
that.
to be fair, there's people all around the world that believe in the flat earth.
Oh,
No, come on, nobody caught the
Come
cheese.
on.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, that was
I
good. That
did.
was good. It was
All
slow
around
burn
the
for me.
world. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. We're going to leave you just wondering if we are in a hologram and if draconians walk amongst you.
Everybody
Thank you
believes
very
Is that
much.
like a low-fat graham cracker?
Is space
Yeah,
real?
it is. Is space real? Are birds real? And does Drew eat graham crackers? Find
Is
out
Earth
more.
just a wheat thin?
Oh, God.
Am I the
Thank you
cream
very
cheese?
much. We got C90 FTW in the chat. Of course, Dave Digital, Solar Miner in Spain, Deadwood, Crypto Code, Uncle Tinfoil, Sincere. Let's see here. Cryptos for Liberty, Crimson Caravan, Randall Dance. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Hope you have a fantastic beginning to the week. And until next time, we bid you adieu.
Wait, what is this button
Peace
do?
out, everyone.